How's it going, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 things that I recommend you purchase before the Biden administration makes them illegal. So let's talk about this. But real quick, before we jump into this video, I want to thank one of the main sponsors of the channel, that being Customs. Customs does a lot to support us here on this channel, as well as support us here in the state of California. They have California compliant parts and features that you can purchase from them, and they just do a lot to really help and support us. So if you'd be interested in taking a look at them and their parts, I'll put a link to them down in the details section. So in this video, I'm going to be covering the 5 things that I recommend people try to get their hands on before the laws change or maybe Biden specifically targets them. So first and foremost, the thing I want to talk about that you should be looking at trying to get your hands on would be magazines. Now I'm going to tackle this from 2 ways. First and foremost, let's just talk about everybody at large, maybe people not in the state of California. I think it's very likely that the Biden administration during the 4-year term will try to target what they are going to try to define as large capacity magazines, likely anything that holds more than 10 rounds. These types of magazines have been heavily discussed. Individuals on the left don't like them. It's one of those buzzwords as well that is used quite a bit, especially when things like mass shootings come up. So large capacity magazines have been discussed, and people on the left have been wanting to get rid of them for quite a while. And now that you have Biden, his gun control plan, his ideology on gun control, as well as a left-leaning Congress, I think it's very likely that they will try to institute some sort of ban on large capacity magazines. And what I expect this maybe to look like would be similar to what California did, where initially they would say, hey, we're going to ban any future purchases of large capacity magazines or any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. And maybe they would grandfather in those magazines that individuals already possess. So that's where my mentality is kind of going with this is you might want to try to purchase them now. There might be attack on them later. Maybe they would have some sort of language that grandfathered them in. And so if there was something like that, it might benefit you now to try to get your hands on those magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. You wouldn't be one of the individuals who's rushing to try to purchase it, especially right now with all the supply that's diminished because of all of our societal concerns and all of that. It would be a good idea to try to look for them now rather than wait until some sort of actual text bill is getting passed, introduced, and gets a whole lot of momentum on it. And then everybody rushes to try to purchase all at once. And so what impact could this have on people like us here in the state of California? Well, what also could happen for us is, since currently you can only go and purchase magazines with 10 rounds or less, as there's a nationwide federal prohibition on possession of those large capacity magazines, you would also see the supply and demand for magazines with 10 or less go up and the supply would diminish. So it would greatly affect us as well. The next thing I want to talk about that you should really be focused on trying to get would be ammunition. Now, this is, again, everybody right now is looking for ammunition. The supply is very, very low right now. The demand is very high for ammunition. But with a lot of discussion about trying to prohibit certain types of ammunition in the US, it would be very likely that this type of issue and the supply and demand issue can be greatly exacerbated by, again, a ban on certain ammunition. Now, what this could take form of is some sort of actual targeting of armor-piercing ammunition. Now, how they would define things like that, it would depend on what they would actually say is armor-piercing ammunition. What could be even worse is if all of a sudden the presidential administration and Congress or whoever would then try to prohibit hollow point ammunition. There's been discussion in the past by various states and also congressmen and women saying that they want to target hollow points. There's some areas that also prohibit the possession of hollow points. So what happens if this goes federal, if all of a sudden hollow points are off the board, across the board in the entire US? You could expect there would be a great rush on the purchase of those. And for us here in the state of California, we already live under very restrictive ammunition laws where we have to go through eligibility checks and background checks. Some people are having to wait to take possession of ammunition. Imagine what would happen if all of a sudden there was some sort of across the board ban on certain ammunition. Everybody's rushing to go buy them. People in other states can purchase them online. Then what all of a sudden if hollow points are banned across the board, everybody's rushing to buy them, but you have to wait for your background check. You have to go to a gun store to purchase it, whereas everybody else can just go online, order what's there, even if it costs a ton, and get it shipped straight to their house. We have to go through those extra steps. So it might be a good idea just thinking ahead, thinking kind of worst case scenario a little bit, especially when things like this are so limited. Along these lines, I also recommend highly, especially right now, that people invest in reloading. I'm starting to get into reloading myself a little bit just because of everything that's going on and the ammunition supplies being so low. I highly recommend, if you can find supplies For reloading, you do that as well. Even that is greatly diminished right now. There's so much demand on reloading equipment and materials as well. But if you can find something and you want to get into reloading, I highly recommend, if you have the financial means, to do that as well. The next thing I think people should be focusing on are purchasing semi-automatic centerfire rifles. Now, this has been a very big emphasis of the Biden administration and his whole platform coming into running for the president. And even now he's ramping up a little bit of discussion about assault weapons bans. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, oh, you're just fear mongering. There's not going to be an assault weapons ban, but it's hard for people to really say that. And I don't understand where that comes from when we've had an assault weapons ban in the past in our history. Now, it might not have been effective. It might have just been completely horrible in its application, done absolutely nothing, but we have had something in the past. And now we have someone like Biden talking about he's wanting an assault weapons ban. His vice president is Kamala Harris, former attorney general in the state of California, who also helped institute the California assault weapons ban. And now you even have them with a left-leaning Congress. So I think it's not irrational to think during these 4 years that there would be some sort of at least push for an assault weapons ban. And what would result in that is a large rush, once again, on the purchase of semi-automatic centerfire rifles, likely AR-15s or AK variant style rifles. And like I've mentioned multiple times in this video, supply is already very low right now for those types of firearms, and the demand is very high, and the demand would only go even higher, and we would probably see even more firearms purchases than we've ever seen if, on top of everything we're dealing with right now, then you have Biden, the administration, saying, or Congress pushing for an assault weapons ban. So for those of you not in the state of California or not already in a restrictive state, I would highly recommend that if you find a rifle that you're interested in, you have the financial means, once again, to purchase it, you might actually want to think twice about walking out of that gun store without purchasing it. And I think the same goes for individuals in the state of California. If you're interested in having some sort of semi-automatic centerfire rifle, I highly recommend you try to get your hands on it. Along with like what I discussed with the magazine things that could pop up, there might be some grandfathering in where you would want to actually have rifles on hand, and you might as well want to have some sort of lowers on hand that you could build out just in case, have the parts that you would need to build out. Just think ahead, think about things that could be targeted. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen in California, and it might be very soon that we would see a lot of these things get expanded to the US at large as well. Another thing that I think people should focus on trying to get their hands on now before some sort of ban or restriction is introduced is body armor. Now, there's been a lot of discussion recently about body armor. Even last year, there were bills introduced to try to get rid of the possession of specific types of body armor, specifically enhanced body armor. And if you want to see what that bill was, which was introduced last year, that was HR 4568. And that was an attack on the possession of enhanced body armor, pretty much saying that you couldn't possess any body armor or go and purchase in the future any body armor that had a grading above level 3. So that would mean a lot of people who have level 4 plates would pretty much be restricted to just having those plates they already had and couldn't go out in the future and purchase any type of body armor or plates that had above a level 3. So the supply of body armor has gone down as well, with a lot of people really considering that they need some sort of additional protection, that they need plates, they need body armor, they need plate carriers. So we've seen a huge rush on those things as well. And again, what would happen if at a federal level, a bill is passed that says, hey, you have to have these now, you need to be in possession with them by this deadline. If you're not in possession of them by this deadline, then you can't have them. You would then see an even greater rush on the purchase of those items. And the last thing I want to mention that I think a lot of people don't realize, which could be targeted as well, because we've seen some politicians say, well, I prefer shotguns. You should have a shotgun, but you shouldn't have an AR-15. I think there's very much a likelihood that there could be an attack on shotguns as well in specific types. I think there could be attacks on shotguns in specific configurations, i.e. shotguns with pistol grips, detachable magazines, larger tubes. I could see things like that popping up with things like assault weapons bans. We've seen things like that in the state of California where shotguns with specific characteristics are considered assault weapons as well. So I could see something like that being introduced with a federal assault weapons ban as well, specifically targeting shotguns. So again, if there's a shotgun that you might have your eye on, you see it in a gun store, you see it online, you could purchase it, you're interested in it, you have the financial means to do it, I would highly recommend maybe you actually pull the trigger and actually purchase that item. So those are the 5 things that I highly recommend people try to get their hands on right now before there's some sort of federal gun control instituted or some just across the board federal bans on these items. I think we're very unsure what's going to happen over the next 4 years. I think there's going to be some aggressive attacks on our Second Amendment rights. So I think if you have the financial means right now to make sure that you're secure in what you have, I don't think it's a bad idea. So if you guys have any recommendations of what you guys think people should go and purchase or what people should be eyeballing right now in anticipation of maybe some negative Second Amendment things coming down the road, go ahead and drop them down in the comment section. If you see someone with a question looking for recommendations on body armor, ammunition, reloading, etc., if you have an answer for them, go ahead and comment back to them and let them know your recommendations. Also, if you like this video and you like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell because it helps your channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, and also spread the word about things like this that are going on in the US. So as always, thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never forget this nation was built by armed scholars. This nation will be maintained by armed scholars.